CBS News has received a detailed description of what appears to be a memo written by the whistleblower one day after President Trump spoke with the president of Ukraine in July. CBS News Chief Washington correspondent Major Garrett joins me now. Hi, Major. What more can you tell us about this?
So let's describe this accurately as another piece of the puzzle. We have two pieces of the puzzle that pre-existed our confirmation about this memo. What were they? The summary of the transcript of the phone call released by the White House and the whistleblower's full-blown complaint that was part of the testimony given before the House Intelligence Committee. This two-page memo is of a different kind, and it is something that we have been told by a source familiar with this investigation led the Inspector General within the intelligence community to take the whistleblower's complaint seriously and deem it credible. This source also tells us that this memo is real and exists. So it's about 2 pages, written July 26th, the day after the president had his phone conversation with the Ukrainian president. And it was a conversation the whistleblower had with an unnamed White House official who was on the call himself or herself. Now, this 2-page memo sort of memorializes the conversation that the whistleblower had with this unnamed White House official who was on the call. The call lasted for about 30 minutes, as this memo indicates, and you can read the memo in its entirety, we should point out. This is really important, on CBSNews.com. Judge it for yourself, read it word for word. But this memo essentially memorializes the conversation that the whistleblower had with this White House official. The call went on for 30 minutes. The phone conversation the whistleblower had with this unnamed White House official lasted, quote, a few minutes. So those are some of the basics, fundamentals of this memo. Let me read a couple of things from it, which I think are possibly interesting to our audience. 1, the official who listened to the entirety, and I'm quoting directly from this memo, the official who listened to the entirety of the phone call was visibly shaken by what had transpired and seemed keen to inform a trusted colleague within the U.S. national security apparatus about the call. Another quote, let me read from this 2-page memo. This is a bit long, so bear with me. Quote, the official described the call as, quote, crazy, frightening, and, quote, completely lacking in substance related to national security. The official asserted that the president used the call to persuade Ukrainian authorities to investigate his political rivals, chiefly former Vice President Biden and his son, Hunter. The official stated that there was already a conversation underway with the White House lawyers about how to handle the discussion because, in the official's view, the president had clearly committed a criminal act by urging a foreign power to investigate a U.S. person for the purposes of advancing his own re-election bid in 2020. That's what the memo says. That is the appraised opinion of a whistleblower. I don't need to tell you, our audience already knows if they've listened to President Trump at all. President Trump believes this whistleblower is a Democrat, has some kind of Democratic sensitivities or sensibilities that undercut the legitimacy of the conclusions drawn by the whistleblower. But nevertheless, the Inspector General within the intelligence community, the Director of National Intelligence, upon seeing this 2-page memo, found it valid enough to deem it credible and to move it through the legal channels that the whistleblower sought protection under to make this information known. Again, the full memo, the 2 pages, you can read on CBSNews.com. Judge it for yourself. But this is, I think it's fair to say, another piece of the puzzle.
And Major, how would you say this plays into the investigation at large at this point?
Well, the investigation is in part about the phone conversation, but it's also about many things that may have led up to that phone call. What were the activities of the president's lawyer, who did not work for the federal government, Rudy Giuliani, in conversations with Ukrainian officials about what the larger context of this phone conversation was or wasn't? And this memo reaches some pretty strident conclusions. I just read that. The official thought the president was committing a criminal act. That's a very serious, very heavily weighted and freighted charge. That hasn't been in any way concluded by the House Democrats. It is something they are trying to investigate. And this is information described to us from the whistleblower. and reflects the whistleblower's own memo written sort of as this phone call was first described. That doesn't mean it's the absolute truth. It means it's the whistleblower's impression. But it does leave a lot of threads that the House Intelligence Committee, the House Judiciary Committee, and the House Oversight Committee are pursuing. And they're doing so under the impeachment inquiry authority granted to them by the Speaker of the House. We know yesterday the White House said that entire inquiry is constitutionally illegitimate and a political effort to overturn the 2016 election. Therefore, the White House will not cooperate with any requests for documents, witnesses, or underlying information.
Major,
so the standoff continues. This memo doesn't end the standoff, but it may clarify some of the underlying issues that the House Democrats under the impeachment inquiry are trying to pursue.
As a result of this memo, how likely is it that those House Democrats will ask to speak to the official named in this memo? Not named, but reference to in this
possibly
memo.
knowable. Well, that might in fact be a part of a future subpoena from the House on this matter. That's a prospect we have yet to see. But if you are trying to ask yourself, does this give further evidence that the House Democrats could pursue? The answer quite obviously is yes. Could you imagine a scenario in which the subpoena of the House would seek to find out more about this, either identity or are there other memos? Are there other pieces of written communication? Is there something about this conversation that is known to the White House but not released to the public that can be pursued? Remember, the White House described it as a summary of the conversation, and releasing it, there was that sort of codicil attached to it saying this is not a verbatim of the call. It is a summary of the call. Is there something else that's not yet known? This memo suggests possibly there might be. That's something House Democrats might well pursue.
All right. Well, Major Garrett, we thank